So first we'll continue with the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas. Verse number So with regard to Master Disha, we're done with verse number 8, which is 7 or 8. So it's said that when the Buddha was alive, there was a very small institution in Nalanda. So in India, they used to have the 5 major and 5 minor fields of knowledge. And so Nalanda seems to have been as one of the centers. And then eventually Nalanda expanded. And then the study of epistemology and logic and Sanskrit linguistics and so forth. In other words, these 5 major and 5 minor sciences were studied. So it used to be like a university. So many monks lived in it. So all the 17 Nalanda masters, for whom I have written the praise, were from Nalanda monastic institution. And the Mulamadhyamaka Karikapa Nagarjuna in Sanskrit, and also Master Dharmakirti's Pramana Vartika, commentary on valid cognition, are in Sanskrit, still extant in Sanskrit. And so the style of writing is very high standard Sanskrit. And so the 5 major sciences were studied in Nalanda monastic institution in those days. And so masters like Nagarjuna and so forth were great Sanskrit scholars as well. So I'm these days working to revive the ancient Indian knowledge tradition, so that the study of logic and so forth that is done in India, perhaps the Indians could use the Indian Sanskrit texts, such as the Mulamadhyamaka Karika and So His Holiness was talking about Madhyamaka Avatara and Prasanapada, written by Master Chandrakirti, whether they are still extant in Sanskrit, original Sanskrit or not. And I used to know one Indian Sanskrit scholar, a great scholar of Sanskrit, Upadhyaya. And he, about 30-40 years ago, so he said that I think it was Prasanapada or and so I asked him to, the Prasanapada is still extant in India, Sanskrit, and I asked him to recite some shlokas from the beginning. And he did that, and when I heard him recite these lines in Sanskrit, I really felt there was a sense of sorrow and sadness in my heart, reflecting on the great masters of Sanskrit, the Indian masters of Buddhism who had lived in the past. So I have also learned the Sanskrit linguistics, it's called the five sandhis, and so today the explanation of Buddhist philosophy could be done best in Sanskrit, in Tibetan, sorry. So I am thinking of spreading the teaching of Sanskrit so that people could, amongst the Indians, so that they could study the original texts written by the Indian masters, such as Mula Madhyamaka Karika and Pramanavartika and so forth. And in time, Nalanda University, also monastic university, kind of declined. Also, the Takshashila also declined, and then Vikramalashila was established later. And so, Master Atisha came from Vikramalashila, which became a center of and a major center of learning in later times. So Master Atisha, the Jo Atisha, took the responsibility of taking care of Vikramalashila, and he was invited by the king or the chieftain of the Gungari, the western part of Tibet, and then the Jangjubu requested Atisha, when he was in Tibet, to give a teaching which would be beneficial to the entire people of Tibet. And therefore, Atisha wrote the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. And then following that text, the Kunken Longchen Rabchampa in the Nyingma tradition wrote the Nyeso Korsum, the trilogy of comfort and ease in meditation. So with regard to the Semnyinya, so comfort and ease in the nature of mind, and when you receive the commentarial teaching on it, there is 100 days that you actually spend to go through the text while receiving the teaching and reflect on the teaching that you have received. And so, and then in the Kagyu tradition, which started with Marpa Lotsawa, the great translator, and Milarepa, his disciple, and then Dakpo Haji, or Gampopa. And so Dakpo Haji wrote the jewel ornament of liberation, which begins with, which is also following the genre of the Lamrim set out by Atisha, and he begins his writing by touching on the Buddha nature. And then in the Sakya tradition, there are the three visions, the teaching called three visions, which also is the like Lamrim, the stages of the path to enlightenment. And then in the Gelug tradition, of course, Je Tsongkhapa wrote the great stages of the path to enlightenment and so forth. And then Master Gyalsey Thokme Sangpos wrote these 37 practices of Bodhisattvas. So we are still on the path pertaining to beings of small scope. And so these teachings pertaining to this is mainly to avert preoccupation with the attractions of this world. So the suffering that is introduced during this part of the teaching is the suffering of suffering, or the obvious painful experiences. So the main protection or the savior is Dharma jewel. So for those beings of small capacity, what protects or saves them from the suffering is the practice of 10 virtuous actions. In other words, giving up the 10 non-virtuous actions. As I said yesterday, the other day also, Master Chandrakirti says, for the aspirants of liberation, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are their refuges. So the Buddha is the only one who is able to teach sentient beings according to their capacities to overcome the negative emotions completely, which are the causes of suffering. So in verse number 7, it says, bound themselves in the jail of cyclic existence. What worldly God can give you protection? So there are these spirits and the local spirits, gods and so forth, who may be able to give some protection for us from some kind of difficulties. And therefore, we do make offerings and do, say prayers to them. But if you consider them to be your object of refuge, submitting yourself totally to them, then that's completely wrong as a Buddhist, as Buddhists. So, for example, Gyebokunga are also worldly gods, not transworldly. And so those gods who are beyond this world, the transworldly, they are the ones to whom we can take refuge. So in the Tibetan history, there has been this controversial spirit called Shugden, Gyabo Shugden. So they appeared or started during the time of the 5th Dalai Lama, and during his life, Tokutapa Yeltsin was very close to His Holiness the 5th Dalai Lama. But then later on, there was some problem between them. And the 5th Dalai Lama mentions that the Tokutapa Yeltsin was not the real, the reincarnation of Jugu Sunam Gyalsey Thokme. So the 5th Dalai Lama mentions that he is the imposter reincarnation. He was the imposter reincarnation of Jugu Gyalsey Thokme. So the false reincarnation of Jugu Sunam Gyalsey Thokme, which is referring to Tokpa Yeltsin, and who, out of wrong prayer, has become the malevolent spirit who harms the beings and the Dharma. So in one of the volumes of the writings of the 5th Dalai Lama, there is this mentioned. So as an appendage, and so saying that he was born from wrong prayer shows the cause by which he was born as an evil spirit, and then his nature is said to be perfidious spirit, and then what he does is that of his harming sentient beings and the Dharma. So if there is someone who can say that the 5th Dalai Lama was someone not authoritative, then perhaps what he says could be challenged, but nobody can actually say that. So I was originally planning to stay at Disket today and then move to Surmur in Sandaling Monastery in Surmur tomorrow. But I'm quite quite sure about the weather, and so I will be moving to. So then, day after tomorrow, I'll be leaving here by road. So because we don't know about the weather. So when I was traveling from Guwahati and Dibrugarh, the aeroplane really shook so badly, and I really felt. I really was scared, really scared. And so I thought that to take these kind of planes may not be really good. This is a small helicopter. Maybe it could fit 3 or 4 people. So what I was saying was that the fifth Dalai Lama had said that and then there was some drawback or complacency among people. And then during the time of teaching Ngawang Chakwa, during the 7th Dalai Lama's time, in his biography, it's very clearly mentioned that after he became the throne holder of the Gelug tradition, the head of the Gelug tradition, or Gaden Tripa, there were some lamas and tulkus who were propitiating the Dölgyal, this controversial evil spirit. So he mentions in his, it's mentioned in his part of biography that there were people who actually propitiated that, and this is totally wrong. It mentions in his biography that Jangja Rebedoj's biography written by Tuken Chogyam Nyima, it's mentioned that Tijin Ngawang Chokden destroyed the structures built for this evil spirit in Garden. So in one of the master's writings, it is mentioned even that while wearing the monastic robes, there are people who actually give themselves, rely on evil spirits or ghosts. So during the time of the 13th Dalai Lama, there were people who propitiated very strongly this evil spirit, whereas masters like Gen Tongbun, Gen Pema Gyaltsen, Gen Yama Gyaltsen, and so forth were totally against this controversial spirit. So one of the previous reincarnations or lives of Trijang Rinpoche used to propitiate Dölgyal, and then after that, Pabongka Rinpoche propitiated Dölgyal. And in the early part of his life, he was non-sectarian practitioner. And Trijang Rinpoche used to tell me that. And so when Trijang Rinpoche was living with Pabongka, Trijang Rinpoche related to me that at one time the Pabongka Rinpoche made a lot of dough balls and pills for a certain, which was a special kind of ingredient for the Hayagriva practice. And so when he was planning to receive some teachings of the Nyingma tradition. Then there was some obstacle from Tergyal. And so it's not the case that Pabongka Rinpoche started propitiating Tergyal out of some real understanding, but out of fear. So Gyalsey Rinpoche, while going through the topic on reliance on a guru, he says that if your teacher says something that is against the teaching of the Buddha, then you should actually, you should actually stop it or reject it. And then he quotes some lines from the Vinaya text. And then according to the Sutrayana, he says that if the teacher's teaching accords with the virtuous practice taught in the sutras, then you should adopt it. Whereas if the teaching is against the great classical text, and if the teacher is teaching something that is negative, then you should actually discard that. And then he quotes from the 50 stanzas of Guru reliance or Guru devotion, where it says that even if the teacher says something, then if you find that teaching to be against the scriptures as well as reason, then you should tell the master that I cannot do this, because this is having done this kind of critical analysis, then you should tell the teacher that this is not something that accords with reason nor scripture, therefore I cannot practice it. And so Gyalsey Rinpoche actually goes through the systems of the Vinaya, the Sutra, and Tantra in accordance with the reliance on, in relation to the reliance on the Guru. So Gyalsey Pabongka was, of course, a really great master of Lamrim and so forth. But right from the beginning, the reason why he took to the practice of Tergyal is out of fear. And it's not the case that Tergyal was someone who became oath-bound and who was actually given the task to protect the Dharma. So, as I said before, Pabongka himself was a non-sectarian practitioner in the beginning of in the earlier part of his life, and the 13th Dalai Lama was very kind and he was really favored by the 13th Dalai Lama. Sometimes he was called to give teaching in the place of the Garden Tripas, who used to actually lead the Mönlam festival teachings. And then when Pabongka Rinpoche started propitiating Tergyal, then that actually because of that, the 13th Dalai Lama was not displeased with him, and therefore he even told Pabongka Rinpoche that by worshipping Tergyal, you actually go against the principle of taking refuge in the three jewels. So therefore, the 13th Dalai Lama was displeased with Gyalsey Pabongka Rinpoche, and Pabongka Rinpoche, during the lifetime of while the 13th Dalai Lama was alive, the Pabongka Rinpoche lived in fear. And sometimes the 13th Dalai Lama also gave some letters, recommendations to good geishis. So such letters from the 13th Dalai Lama was taken by Chingyok of Nobulinka. So there was some special bell So when the letter from the 13th Dalai Lama was taken to Pabongka Rinpoche, and Pabongka Rinpoche heard the bell of this special messenger on horse, I mean, it is said that he actually had, fear, was scared. But after the 13th Dalai Lama passed away, the Pabongka Rinpoche seems to have actually done something that is against the wish of the 13th Dalai Lama, and he spread the practice of Tögyel really widely. I also did propitiate Tögyel in the past, but later. So first, Nechung told me not to propitiate Tögyel. So I didn't listen to him. I told him to keep quiet, because there are many people who propitiate Tögyel, and it would cause controversy and problems. So for about 5 or 6 years after that, I told him to shut up. Nechung really kept quiet about it. And so I'm more, I have the upper hand over Nechung. And so later I did dual divination, which really clearly showed that, in which I actually wrote whether I should practice and stop the practice of Tögyel right now or after the New Year's ceremony. And then it actually showed that I should stop right away. And in Garden Monastery, in Montgot, in South India, when one morning I had a dream. So I was on top of the Gyalsey Monastery, and one of my security guards, the bodyguards, was named Tögyel, and I saw in the dream that the structure, which was specially built for Tögyel, should be destroyed, or it was actually being destroyed. And when I did the double divination, whether this dream could be taken reliable or not, and it actually came that it should be taken as a reliable indication. And so I was moving on that day from Garden to Drepung Monastery. So on my way, I said that I want to go to Dzogchen, or the Common Assembly Hall of Garden Monasteries, on the roof. And then I did the tinchul, or the propitiation of the Dharmaraja. So there was a plan to renovate this prayer hall of Garden. And I put in the dough bowl whether this the Tögyel should be gotten rid of when the renovation was done, or after I reached Dharamsala, or should I do it right away? And so the Mo showed that the divination showed that I should get rid of the Tögyel statue and so forth right away. So some Tögyel practitioners say that the Dalai Lama is actually flattering the Nyingma people. That's not the case. I was really careful doing all this divination, and I had difficulty telling people about this. And then I asked I had actually asked the abbots of the Garden monasteries and told them that you saw me during this divination, and I told them that I had this dream this morning, and I didn't just take that, I just checked whether this dream should be taken as reliable, and then I did this divination, and with the 3 points in the dough bowls, and it came up that the practice of the Dögyal should be, the Dögyal statue should be cleared from, eliminated from the garden right away. And so I went to Drepung, and I went to for lunch to at Ling Rinpoche's Labrang, Ling Rinpoche's residence. And I told Ling Rinpoche that I did something really, how do you call it? I caused a mess, kind of. And what did you do? He asked me. And I said, this is what I did. And Ling Rinpoche said, that's very good. And Trijang Rinpoche was at that time in Bodh Gaya or somewhere, or Varanasi or somewhere, and then he came back to Dharamsala when I was in Dharamsala, and I told him about all these things that I did. And Trijang Rinpoche told me that when it comes to real issues, important issues, the Nechung Chogyal cannot be faulty, is infallible. So in 1958 or so, Nechung has actually prophesied that this jewel, this crystal jewel's radiance will shine from the west. So he was joking that from the when he meant by west, perhaps he was meaning Nubra, but so when I was fleeing Tibet, Lhasa was all surrounded by Chinese soldiers. And Nechung, in the beginnings, told me to stay in Novolenka. Then in 1959, March 10th, there was the uprising in Lhasa. And then on the 17th of March, it was very critical. So many Chinese soldiers were moving into Lhasa. And to the southern side of Potala was the river, and there were artillery, how do you call that, shells? How do you call torpedoes? Shells were covered in the beginning, but on that day. And then on March 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, every night, lots of trucks, military trucks, were moving in Lhasa. And one time, a small rocket actually fell. Rocket shell was fell in Novolenka, and so I propitiated and invoked Nechung on the 17th, and he said, today, right this day, you should live. So you should cross the Kichu River. There's nothing, there's not going to be no problem at all, he told me. In Drepung, in 1959, during the Mönam festival, Nechung had given a prophecy. This big river without any retaining wall, no inundation, and I have built. I have the means to put a bridge across that. So Trijang Rinpoche mentioned this to me, that when it comes to critical issues, the Nechung cannot be fallible. And Palden Lhamo, the goddess protector, goddess of Tibet, with regard to her, the second Dalai Lama had a special Thangka painting of her And then during the fifth Dalai Lama, after he actually had died, stopped breathing completely, his regent wept a lot, cried and in sorrow, and then he actually was complaining, how should I carry on with these projects? And the Rinpoche told me that after having died once, that it's because Desi was asking how he should carry on with the different works. The fifth Dalai Lama actually came back to life and told him that with regards to the smaller matters you can decide, but when it comes to bigger issues and more important ones, then you should actually do divination in front of this Baldenhamo's Thangka painting, which has actually been passed down from the second Dalai Lama, and therefore this practice had been done. And Trijang Rinpoche told me that there's no fallibility. The Nechung's, with regard to Baldenhamo, doing this kind of divination cannot fail at all. And so he told me like that. And Lingam Rinpoche, of course, didn't have anything to do with the Togel practice. But since Trijang Rinpoche did the practice, but when I related what I did in the Ganden, he actually told me these things. So I felt quite at ease, because I feel that I know that I have done things which are in accord with the thoughts and the desires of my two masters. So when Pabongka Rinpoche received some transmissions of Pabongka Rinpoche's writings, Rinpoche told me that, but when it came to the transmission of the practice ritual of Shungden, Rinpoche somehow, so it was somehow, Rinpoche told me that he couldn't attend the teaching when it really, on that day when Pabongka gave the teaching on this ritual of Togel, which was who was actually given the title, the Dharma protector of the victorious master Manjushri, meaning Tsongkhapa. So he told me that somehow I missed that teaching on that day and didn't have to listen to it. So whether it's here in Ladakh or in India, there are people who, you have really followed my instructions and advice and gave up the practice of the Togel. And then the Togel practitioners, the worshippers of Togel, have said that I actually have, banned the practice of Togel. And right from the beginning, I have made it very clear, in fact, that I have never said people cannot propitiate or worship Togel, but should not. So in Sera Monastery, Bombara Kangsen monks had actually built their own, the practitioners of the Togel have their own monastery in Sera. So what I have said is I have not really banned the propitiation as such, but it's up to the individuals whether they want to propitiate some Togel or not. So I'm being frankly with you, so just to pass time from this teaching. relate to you these things. So the kunga are called fierce aspect of worldly deities and not supramundane. So you should not be deceived by people who may come to you that saying that if you propitiate Dögyal, you will have success in business. And so in Mongolia, this is done. One geshe from Gyalsey monastery who propitiates Dögyal, and so a good scholar from Gyalsey, Damdul or somebody by name, Geshe Tendar from Garden Gyalsey, really he's a big propitiator of Dögyal, and he used to, he spreads this vase of wealth, which he especially prepares in connection with Dögyal, and he gives this to the people in Mongolia, saying that if you keep this vase and do propitiate Dögyal, you'll have success in your business. I know Gyang and Tendar very well. We know each other very well. So later on, you would know that Tendar actually, when he died, towards the end of his, when he died a very sad death, and there was some talk that he also was born as a ghost. So if you propitiate and really rely on the Yebu Shugden, after you're dead, you may be born as ghost. And so instead of that, if you actually rely on me and refuge in me, it would be better. So I thought it's good to remind people of this. Therefore, when you seek refuge, take refuge in the rituals which is not will not betray you. This is the practice of Bodhisattva. Subdue said, all the unbearable suffering of bad rebirths is the fruit of wrongdoing. Therefore, even at the cost of your life, never do wrong. This is the practice of Bodhisattva. So the Buddha said, do not commit any. Verse number 8, finished. So do not commit any evil. Cultivate a wealth of virtue, thoroughly pacify your mind or tame your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So whether an action is negative or positive depends on is differentiated on the basis of the fruit they bring about. The fruit, if the fruit is a positive one, the consequence of your action is a positive one, then the action is considered positive. If it's negative, then the action is negative. So if you actually give teachings in order to exploit others, the result of that is going to be negative, because the action itself, though apparently virtuous, giving teaching, but because of your motivation, it turns out to be negative. And so, if you have a good thought, intention to help others, and do some action, then the action is positive. Whereas if you have a negative action, then negative intention, then the action is bad. So you need to subdue your mind. How do you do that? Is not being attached with the preoccupations of this life, not in the preoccupations of or the attractions of next life, and not being attracted to the samsaric marvels, nor being attracted to the mere liberation for yourself alone. And from verse number 9, the path of the intermediate beings of beings of intermediate capacity is shown, like dew on the tip of a blade of grass. Pleasures of three worlds last only a while and then vanish. Aspire to never-changing supreme state of liberation. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So the liberation, as it is mentioned here, is that state where you have totally eliminated from your mind stream all negative emotions. And so I have told you before, last year or so perhaps, that you should memorize this verse. So this verse from Madhyamaka Karika, it says that by eliminating common negative emotions, there is liberation. And common negative emotions arise from conceptual thought, which is the exaggerated outlook. And this in turn comes from mental construction or fabrication. And so so even what the science, even what actually Master Nagarjuna has said when he says that the exaggerated outlook actually gives rise to negative emotions, and it's really called the same as what the scientists say today. So regarding liberation, the true cessation, this verse shows very clearly. And the verse ends by saying that this fabrication, the mental construct, is overcome by emptiness. So when your mothers who have loved you since time beginning, without beginning, are suffering, what use is your own happiness? So this warm heart is something even animals appreciate, don't they? So regarding human beings, we have the affection towards our near and dear ones. There is this love, but it's more or less tinged with attachment, desirous attachment, and therefore it's biased, because it actually happens because they do something good to you. So others' attitudes towards you may be good, then you become biased. And so when you have some dogs and cats who really shows appreciation of what you give, your appreciation for your gift and food, and to them you like them. When that doesn't happen, then you actually don't like them, and you even shoo them away. So with our wisdom mind, the intelligence that we have, we can actually enhance this love and compassion towards others. So even someone who is our enemy, the so-called enemy, can become our friends. So because they are human beings and that they want happiness and not suffering like ourselves. So, thinking along these lines, you will not consider them as someone to feel averse. And today's enemy can turn into your friends the next day. So if you look at the world, we don't need to actually touch religion. But if you have the sense of oneness of human being and have compassion towards others, affection towards others, today's enemy, sworn enemy, can turn into your friends. Whereas if you are full of anger and hatred towards them and aversion, there's never going to be a time when there's no enemy for you. So if you think only of your own So if you could have a sense of cherishing others, I mean, not to talk about called sentient beings as infinite as the expanse of the space, but the human beings on this earth. I mean, you will have peace of mind, which will help in your good health and long life and so forth. If you think about us and them, and you are full of the attachment, anger, and so forth, what happens at the end is you remain lonely. So if you look at your neighbors, the father and the mother of your neighbor, if they are kind, of course you will have more friends. And if at the time of death, the rest of the neighbors will actually feel dear to have lost you. And everyone feels sad that they have lost you, and everyone will make a prayer for you, say prayer for you. So instead of that, if you remain short-tempered, angry, and then without any friends, while alive, you'll be lonely. And at the time of when you die, all neighbors will be happy and said, oh, this bad person has died. That's very good. So which is better? People saying that that serves him good and not feeling happy when you die, or feeling sad when you die. Which one would you prefer? So what you should think is that even if you are not a believer, I mean, if you wish to help others, and even if not being able to help others, at least not harm them, then it will be really good. And therefore, thinking of caring about others' well-being, you will be found to be really precious for you. And so this kind of thinking thoughts to help others, coupled with your intelligence and wisdom, would be called more powerful. It's an unbiased one. And so the Bodhisattva practice here is set with in connection with the equaling and exchanging self and others. And then the verse number 11, regarding this, you should also study Bodhisattva Charya Avatara. So all suffering comes from the wish for your own happiness. Perfect Buddhas are born from the thought to help others, and therefore exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others. This is practice of Bodhisattvas. And so by learning the techniques in Bodhisattva Charya Avatara, you should think of doing the practice of giving and taking. So in 2008, there was this demonstration all over Tibet on the 10th of March. So we actually had the usual function, commemoration function at the in Dharamsala, and after the program, I was back in my room, and somebody received a call from Lhasa and telling them that there are people moving towards Lhasa to demonstrate. So I thought that, oh, now they will really face problem. So they will suffer. And so it really made me anxious. So I had nothing to do. And then at that time, I visualized the Chinese military officials in front of me and took into myself their negativities like anger and so forth, and then visualized giving my own practice of love, compassion, and patience, and so forth to them. So I did this practice of giving and taking, quite intensely, and of course, in reality, may not have any effect on the Chinese, but it really helped me. So by doing this practice of giving and taking, of course, it'll have no effect on others, but actually, it really helps you not to feel depressed. So Zabedi Rinpoche has said, when you are suffering, you will actually recall the Dharma. If you have praised a lot, the arrogance increases. So I don't like praise, but I prefer being criticized. And I don't like to be happy because that increases one's attachment and so forth. And then another master has said, so when I'm happy, I dedicate the virtues for enlightenment and for the collection of merit and wisdom. And so in the lodging practice, in connection with the lodging practice, the mind training practice, I mean, when you usually we think that when you have suffering, you are bogged down. But when in the context of lodging practice, you actually take on the suffering of others, your courage increases. Verse number 12, even if someone out of strong desire steals all your wealth and has it stolen, dedicate to him your body, possessions, and your virtue, past, present, and future. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So as I said, I received the teaching, Gomrim, the stages of meditation, I received from Sajya Khenpo Sangye Tenzin, and the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas I received from Kunu Lama Tenzin Gyalsen Rinpoche. And he told me a story about Gyalsey Thokme Sangpos, the author of this text. So he received quite a lot of offerings from his benefactors. And so he used to actually share whatever he received from others. So since he gave to poor people what he received from his benefactors, and then at one point he was carrying the offerings. So Gyalsey Thokme Sangpos actually gave some things, the offerings to people, and said, actually advised them, directed them not to go in certain direction because his benefactors would see the offerings being carried by them and would be against them. And so he directed the people to another direction to avoid his benefactors be criticizing them. So even if someone broadcasts all kinds of unpleasant remarks about you throughout 3,000 worlds, in return with the loving mind speak of his qualities. This is practice of Bodhisattva. Verse number 15 read, verse number 16 read, verse number 17, if an equal or inferior person disparages you out of pride, place him as you would place your spiritual teacher. With respect on the crown of your head, this is practice of Bodhisattvas. Though you lack what you need and are constantly disparaged, afflicted by dangerous sickness and spirits, without discouragement take on the misdeeds and pain of all living beings. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So when you are too poor, there is the risk of losing the practice of bodhicitta, and when you are too well off, again that also hinders your practice. Though you become famous and many bow to you, and you gain riches equal to Vishravana, see that worldly fortune is without essence and be unconceited. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So I knew some scholars who had come from Kham region or other areas. They were very poor in the beginning, but once they entered some monastic university and studied, and then slowly they became learned and had more teachers, and then they go to other countries like in the West and so forth, and become more or less puffed up. So Dreshilambu Monastery's abbot was in New Jersey, living in New Jersey, but he has remained what he was. So of course you cannot change his face, Ladakhi face, but really a sincerely dedicated person. Where are we? Verse number 20. So it refers to the enemy or foes. The real enemy is within yourself, like anger. When you become angry, you really breathe really heavily, and then your face turns red, and when you talk to others, all kinds of bad words come out. And so these are the results of your anger, and so it turns you mad. Verse number 21. Sensual pleasures are like salt water. The more you indulge, the more thirst increases. Abandon at once those things which breed clinging attachment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So up to this is the practice of conventional bodhicitta. Whatever appears and down shows the ultimate bodhicitta practice. Whatever appears in your mind from the start is your own mind. Your mind from the start was free from fabricated extremes. Understanding this, do not take to mind inherent signs of subject and object. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So here, this particular verse is kind of similar to the view of Yogacara Savatantrika Madhyamaka. And verse number 23, when you encounter attractive objects, though they seem beautiful, like rainbow in the summer, don't regard them as real and give up attachment. That's the practice of bodhisattvas. So, in accordance with the tradition of Chandrakirti following Master Nagarjuna and his spiritual heir, so though the Chittamatras say that everything is in the nature of mind, when they interpret that of the Sutra of 10 Grounds, where it says all the three realms of existence are the mind. So the Chittamatras interpret that way, but the Madhyamaka, like Chandrakirti and so forth, say that this should be understood as meaning that everything is merely designated by mind. So when you say everything is merely mind, it doesn't mean that things that are designated do not exist. So mere name, mere designation doesn't mean that the objects themselves don't exist. But the objects that are designated, when you try to search for their identity within them, nothing can be pinpointed as being this and that, and therefore you find that they are merely designated and merely in name. So even if you may say that there's a valid cognition, which is valid in terms of the appearance of some kind of objective existence, and still there is some clinging left. All forms of suffering are like verse number 23. So verse number 23 shows that everything is, appears like a rainbow or illusion, like it's after you come out of the single-pointed absorption and emptiness. Verse number 28. Verse number 29, understanding that disturbing emotions are destroyed by special insight with calm abiding, cultivate concentration which surpasses the four formless absorptions. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Since the five perfections without wisdom cannot bring perfect enlightenment, along with skillful means cultivate the wisdom which does not conceive the three spheres as real. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. If you don't examine your own errors, you may look like a practitioner but not act as one. Therefore, always examining your own errors, rid yourself of them. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. If through the influence of disturbing emotions you point out the faults of another Bodhisattva, you yourself are diminished, so don't mention the faults of those who have entered great vehicle. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Reward and respect cause us to quarrel and make hearing, thinking, and meditating decline. For this reason, give up attachment to the households of friends, relations, and benefactors. Practice of Bodhisattvas. Harsh words disturb the minds of others and cause deterioration in the Bodhisattva's conduct. Therefore, give up harsh words, which is unpleasant to others. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And so the 37, the verses numbered 37 also finished. And then after that comes, for all who want to train the Bodhisattva path, I have written these 37 practices of Bodhisattvas, following what has been said by excellent ones on the meaning of sutras, tantras, and treatises. Though not poetically pleasing to scholars, so this is showing humility, this verse, owing to my poor intelligence and lack of learning, I have relied on the sutras and words of the excellent. So I think these Bodhisattva practices are without error. However, as the great deeds of Bodhisattvas are hard to fathom for one of my poor intelligence, I beg the excellent to forgive all faults, such as contradictions and non-sequiturs. Through the virtue from this, may all living beings gain the ultimate and conventional bodhicittas and thereby become like the protector Chandrasik, who dwells in neither extremes, not in the world nor in peace. This was written for his own and others' benefit by the monk Thokme, an exponent of scripture and reasoning in the Cape of Ngulchurinj. So as I said yesterday, next I don't remember if I received the transmission from Ling Rinpoche or... So in Lhasa, I did give a transmission of these three essential points. So I don't remember if I received it from Ling Rinpoche, Tata Rinpoche or Tata Rinpoche. I don't remember. I have received the transmission on page number, the green book that you have, page number 51, 52, 53. to the stages of visualization of the three essential points entitled The Staircase to Climb the Joyous Land, which means Tushita, heaven. So that's the title that I just read. Homage to Aya Avalokiteshvara. So I've received a transmission or explanation on the basis of the explanation of the three essential points on the basis of its root text, the verses. But regarding the commentary itself, written by the second Dalai Lama, Gyalsey Thokme Sangpos, it's not the case that if you have not received the transmission, reading transmission, and explanation that you can pass and teach others, and if you have not received, it's not the case you cannot. It's not the case that you cannot teach others. So there are the 400 verses, and other texts have the. So some of the texts, like 400 verses with Arya Deva and so forth, there is the transmission of the explanation, and whereas certain texts by Master Nagarjuna do not have that. So regarding this particular commentary by the second Dalai Lama, although there's no explanatory transmission as such, I don't think that it's wrong to. I think there's nothing wrong to use it to teach others. So Rimnga then talked by which is text on the completion stage of Gyalsamaja Tantra by Master Tsongkhapa, and also does not have the explanatory transmission, but I do teach people. So it would be good if we could use these texts to benefit others. The verse of salutation, the expression of knowledge and the compassion of countless conquerors in various forms and means to discipline anyone is known as Avalokiteshvara, whose banner of fame is widely spread. I pay homage to you, the only kin of the beings of the three existences. So the Gendun Gyatso, the second Dalai Lama's father, was a Kagyupa. And then he was recognized as the reincarnation of the first Dalai Lama. And so right in his childhood, he used to recognize Tashilumbu as his own monastery. I used to tease Kachin, the late Kachin Sepa La. And so he used to tell me that the Tashilumbu is actually the monastery of the Dalai Lamas. But then I teased him that, in that case, who actually expelled the Gendun Gyatso, second Dalai Lama, from Tashilumbu? So if Gendun Gyatso, the second Dalai Lama, had remained in Tashilumbu itself, his enlightened deeds, his legacies and contributions in the central part of Tibet may not have happened. And that the three monastic institutions may not have happened. So at that time, when he left the Tashilumbu monastery, the abbot of Drepung Monastery had a dream of him coming to Drepung, and therefore when he reached Drepung, he was welcomed. And then he studied in Drepung, and then later became abbot of Drepung, and also later of Sera abbot. And then he went to Chogyal, and he recognized the small lake of Paldenlhamo as the Lhamo Lotso. And then Thakpo Trazang Thakpo Monastery was already there, established, and he became the abbot of that monastery. And then next came the third Dalai Lama, Sonam Gyatso, who went to Mongolia. So the first Dalai Lama founded the Dashilimbo Monastery, and the second Dalai Lama became the abbot of Debung and Sera, and also in Hotak, a region of Tibet, he spread his deeds. And then the third Dalai Lama Dalai Lama's deeds spread in Mongolia. And before that, in the 12th, 13th centuries, Dogen Chogyal Pagba actually had gone to Mongolia, and so there was already connection with Tibetans. And then after the third Dalai Lama went to Mongolia, this called tradition of studying extensively the philosophical texts in Mongolia really spread widely. And they were great scholars of Mongolia. So the previous Dalai Lamas having laid the foundation. And the fourth Dalai Lama was actually born as a Mongolian. And so the fifth Dalai Lama's, the spread of his deeds also had already the foundation from the previous Dalai Lamas. The sixth Dalai Lama was maybe a great accomplished master. Why I'm relating these is the second Dalai Lama, the Yedin Gyatso, was a non-sectarian practitioner. So in his biography, written by Yangpa Choje's biography of the second Dalai Lama mentions that the Gendrin Gyatso was a non-sectarian practitioner, and at that time he was known as the non-sectarian yellow hat master. So he was following all the Satya Nyingma Kagyu Gyalur, and so he was known by that title. And so the series of Dalai Lamas. The seventh Dalai Lama, it's not very clear, but the 13th Dalai Lama, at that time, Lerab Lingpa was the specific tertun of him. And the third Dalai Lama has written a practice of Purpa, Vajrakilaya. And Ngodum Tsogni, one of my debate assistants, told me that he was a teacher of the previous Gombasar. So he told me that Gombasar used to say Jigje, the Yamantaka practice, but he also practiced the Vajrakilaya. So Ngodusongni was told by his teacher, Gombasar, the previous one, and so Ngodusongni related this to me. And so the previous Dalai Lamas were also non-sectarian practitioners, and therefore I also am a non-sectarian practitioner. Should I tell a story here? So you need to make offering in order for me to tell you the story. So the story is that Nechung oracle prophesied me. So he actually told me that I should be non-sectarian practitioner, and I didn't really take that seriously. But later, in front of the the Avalokiteshvara Vati statue, so Vati Sangpo, this Avalokiteshvara statue, was brought through Lo Chimigyatsa and from by the Dzongachede monastery monks and to Dharamsala, and they were moving from Dharamsala to South India, and at that time, for many centuries, the monks of Dzongachede monks of the Dzongkachete monastery were actually serving the Gyalsey Thokme statue. And so at that time, when they were moving to South India from Dharamsala, I did some divination whether the statue should move with them to South India or stay with me. And so it came out that it should stay with me. So I am like the caretaker of Gyalsey Thokme statue these days. So I do my practice. So I do have some kind of a feeling that I am like a student or the messenger of Avalokiteshvara. So in front of Gyalsey Thokme statue, I invited Ling Rinpoche and Tujang Rinpoche. So I told them that Gyalsey Thokme is manifesting Avalokiteshvara, the patron deity of Tibet, and Yongzin Ling Rinpoche. From now until I attain enlightenment, I regard you as on my crown as the spiritual master. And then Nechung oracle, since the time of the third Dalai Lama, became had a very special connection with the Dalai Lamas, and so I told them I'm doing this divination in order to check whether I should follow the non-sectarian tradition and receive teachings from the other Tibetan Buddhist traditions and or not. And so it came out that I should follow the non-sectarian tradition. And so the Gyalsey Rinpoche, I was going to receive the teaching on Purba, the Vajrakilaya, from the Gyalsey Rinpoche, and I did the divination. It actually came out that I should receive it. So there is a list of teachings that I have received. A list of I've compiled the list of teachings and transmissions and so forth that I've received from the different masters of different Tibetan Buddhist traditions. And Chögyal Rinpoche also I received. I am really fond of receiving explanatory transmissions. So I do that to give the explanatory teachings to others as well. But most people prefer initiations, tantric initiations, saying that they receive blessings. So it is also used to be in the past the case. For the Chinese also, when you give some teachings, they fall asleep. But Westerners are different. When I give explanations, they really are alert, listening attentively. So the second Dalai Lama, Gyalsey Gyatso, was a great master. So the first three Dalai Lamas were incomparable. Gyalsey Trup, Gyalsey Gyatso, and Sonam Gyatso. I present this garland to be easy to understand words, the supreme instructions that reveals in a nutshell, the meaning of sutric and tantric scriptures as practice of present, the near death, and the intermediary state. So these are the 3 points that are touched here. The practices for for this life, for the near death, and intermediary state. This instruction of Avalokiteshvara, known as the 3 essential points, was given to the translator Trophu Lotsawa, the translator from Trophu, Champapel by Mitazoki, the Lord of Attainments, as a Dharma gift, the biography of Jetsun Venerable Mitra, the greatness of this instruction and the preliminary practices are explained in detail in commentaries by previous masters and therefore should be learned from them. Here, the actual stages of visualization will be explained in a way that is very easy to understand. The instruction has two parts, citing the sources of the root text and the process of implementing their meaning. Citing the sources of the root words. The root word says, in this life, meditate on regular practice, the personal deity. When near death, meditate on the instructions of transference and so forth. So we see that we are the people having special connection with Avalokiteshvara, but Avalokiteshvara is the embodiment of all the compassion of all Buddhas, and it is the root of compassion is the root of bodhicitta, and so bodhicitta is the essential practice that we must cultivate. So regarding the transference or the ejection of mind from the body, I mean, there are various practices that we may do regarding Guru Yoga practices. And then we should be able to actually make some transformation within ourselves so that we are, and at the when we die and we are at the intermediate state, we can actually transform that into the practice so that you do the practices of this life and help yourself in at the time of death, and then the intermediate state, and then have impact in the next life, so that you can continue your practice in the future lives. So you need to familiarize your mind with the practices, not just saying some ritual once or twice. So the more familiarity you have with the practices, and then when at the time of death, when you remind yourself of the practice, I mean, it immediately it will have impetus on your mind. And if your practice is very strong, then you can also recall them at the Bardo. So whether your practices are going successfully, effectively or not can be checked in dream states. When you find yourself being able to do the practices in a dream state, I mean, efficiently, then that's a measure of having done your practice effectively. The first line reveals the practice of this life, the second for when near death, and the third the practice of intermediate state. The fourth line should be related to all states. Although transference and mixing are practices required at the near-death and intermediate states, in order to benefit at those times, it is also necessary that one should practice right from the present time. As for the method of practice, it should be continuous, like the flow of river, without being too intense on one day and too weak on another. The process of implementing the meaning of the words, this has four parts. The process of daily commitment as a practice of this life, explaining transference, the practice near death, and explaining mixing, the practice of the intermediate state, and alongside this, revealing the essential aspects of view, meditation, and conduct. So, as it is mentioned in the stages of the meditation, you need to do the preliminary practices, such as reminding yourself of impermanence and suffering and so forth. And then thoroughly develop great compassion. One should visualize the Lama at the crown, the deity at the heart, and one's mind as unborn. So you talk about taking blessings or receiving blessings from Lama. Of course, your mind and the Lama mind are two different continuums. They cannot become one continuum as such. But what does that mean when you say your mind merges or mixes with the Lama's mind? So just as the Lama does the practice of bodhicitta and so forth, I mean, if you are able to develop these qualities within yourself, those that have not yet been born in you, I mean, you develop them. Those that are born in you, you should enhance them. So with regard to the Lama and yourself, the subtlest object or the basis of designation of yourself, the Lama, and the deity are those of the subtle clear light mind. So within that clear light mind, the innate clear light mind, the Lama's mind, your mind, and the deity's mind are of the same nature or essence. And so in the Dzogchen practice also, this is what is focused on. Mahamudra and the great perfection, and in the Dzogchen, in the Gelug practice, the inseparability of the bliss and emptiness are all, I mean, boiled down to this clear light mind. Benjamin Lobsang Chogyin says, a scholar who is learned in the definitive teachings and have the experience, I mean, to such a scholar, all the different traditions boil down to the same point. So by saying one's mind, visualizing on one's mind and the deity's mind and your mind are, I mean, the Lama's mind are of the same nature. You should understand in that way. In order to practice the meaning of this, there are 4 points: the instruction of encouraging factors, the instruction on meditation, on bodhicitta as the actual practice, the instruction of requesting personal deities and lamas as the means, and the instruction of meditation on non-production of one's mind as an entity. The first point is explained in the first line when it says, by remembering impermanence and suffering. The first part refers to the meditation on death and impermanence and indefiniteness property of death as a means of reversing the clinging to this life. The latter part illustrates the means to develop the genuine wish to be free from cycle of existence by understanding that the whole cycle of existence or samsara is the very nature of suffering. This brings one to have a feeling of disgust towards the glamour of samsara. Taking the example of this line, one should practice the complete process of cycle of visualization, of ways of training the mind on the stages of the path common to the small individual, and the ways of training the mind on the stages of the path common to individuals with middle mental scope. I fear that it will be too detailed if I explain them here. So these practices should be learned from the glorious conqueror, Losang Dragwa's teachings on the stages of the path to enlightenment itself. The second point is shown by the second line, by thoroughly developing great compassion. Here it is shown that instead of pursuing mere personal liberation from cycling existence, one wholeheartedly takes upon oneself alone, the task of achieving benefit and happiness for all sentient beings by developing the mind to a state of supreme enlightenment, and then intensively training the mind to desire to practice the way of life of bodhisattvas, and so on. And then the third point, the instruction of requesting personal deities and lamas as the means. When one has generated the mind of supreme enlightenment and become perfect in the true collections and achieves enlightenment, nothing is meaningful other than liberating all sentient beings. However, at present I do not have such potential. Therefore, it is necessary to have a refuge that can save sentient beings right now from this intolerable suffering of the negative states of existence and the cycle of existence. So you should think, I will beseech and request help from Arya Avalokiteshvara and 1,000 Buddhas of the fortunate eons. This visualize on your crown a stainless white crystal stupa with 1,000 doors transparent, so you are able to see from inside out and from outside in, and which has the quality of light. In the vast part of the stupa, in the dome of the stupa, on the disk of lotus and moon, in your kind root Lama, is your kind root Lama in the aspect of Venerable Arya Avalokiteshvara, his features being white in color like a snow mountain, and one face, 4 arms. 4 hands, and the 2 hands, the first 2 hands hold at his heart, and the right hand hold, lower hand holding a moon crystal, with the left hand holding white flower, lotus flower, seated with cross-legged, individual cross-legged form, wearing robes with precious ornaments and various skills, a divine form adorned with major and minor signs appearing, but devoid of inherent existence, like a rainbow in the sky. So here, with regard to the visualizing Chandra-Zik Avalokiteshvara, you should meditate on emptiness, and from within that state of meditation on emptiness, then you appear, you visualize the Chandra-Zik appearing to you. So in this, His Holiness was referring to meditation on emptiness by using the lines from the 22nd, the first verse from the 22nd chapter of Mula Madhyamaka Karika, which says not the aggregates, nor different from the aggregates, or separate from the aggregates. Neither is he in the aggregates, nor are the aggregates in him. He does not possess the aggregates, what is Tathagata. So, at the 1,000 doors are 1,000 awakened and developed ones and or Buddhas of the fortunate eons. So when we talk about the heart, it does not necessarily refer to the physical heart that we have. But there are the 2 side channels and the central channel in which the wind energy and the blood and so forth also flows. So the process of visualizing the deity at heart in this connection. And then there are the chakras at the crown, throat, heart, navel, and secret place. And so the 8, 16, 16, 32, 8, and then, what's that? 8, 16, 8? 64 and spokes in the chakras. So when you actually focus your mind in the center of these chakras, there are experiences that you draw. So I have a friend who actually is able to have these dissolution processes happening because of being able to meditate on, single-pointedly. So there is also a chakra at the forehead. So if you really focus your mind on these vital points, it seems that although I do not have the experience, there are people who actually have the experience of the dissolution. So you don't have to actually think of the physical heart. But at the central channel, at the the center of your body here at the chest, then you can visualize the heart with the 8 petals. So imagine one's heart as a 1,000-petaled red lotus clearly opened up at its hub on the moon mandala, the very personal deity of Avalokiteshvara, who is indivisible from one's mind and who is visualized on one's crown, should be seen as it were in the form of 1,000 stainless white white R's with the property of whitish light radiating out of the 1,000 petals around the white tree syllable on the seed of the moon at the heart of Avalokiteshvara. Visualize the garland of 6-syllable mantra like a thread of pearls. Then, with intense faith concentration, concentrate on Lama Avalokiteshvara with 1,000 Buddhas of the fortunate eons, so that tears well up in your eyes, the hairs of the body move with single-pointed longing. Beg compassionate Guru, personal deity, I beg you that my parents, sentient beings of 6 types, who are sunk in the great ocean of suffering of cycle of existence, who are without protection, without refuge, and who are deprived of suffering, and are suffering, be liberated right now, liberated quickly, and liberated at this very place from this ocean of suffering. Having made this application through such an intense, forceful lamentation, rays of light radiate from the body of Avalokiteshvara on the crown and strike at the heart, Avalokiteshvara at the heart. Rays of light radiate from the bodies of 1,000 Buddhas of the fortunate eon and strike at 1,000 R's at their heart, and from the Avalokiteshvara at the heart with 1,000 R's. Gush forth immeasurable streams in the appearance of white nectar, that is the entity of the indivisible wisdom. The whole of the inside of one's body is filled to the brim, and the negative deeds and excursions with the imprints of the 3 doors are expelled forcefully from all the pathways of the sense organs and pores of the body, bodily hair in the form of soot, charcoal like liquid, and scorpions. Your body transforms into the body of Avalokiteshvara like crystal ball with complete and clear major and minor signs. The very stream of nectar comes out from the pathway of the senses and bodily pores. It first goes to the hell realm, and it completely fills all the places of hell, purifying and cleansing from their roots all the suffering of cold and heat and their causes and actions and afflictive emotions. Their world habitat, comprising the burning iron ground, the inflaming iron house, the unpleasant dark dungeon of eyes, etc., instantaneously disappear and transforms into an appearance like that of the pure realm of bliss in the nature of precious jewel, open, expensive, soft to touch, and bliss. So doing these kind of visualizations and purifications and so forth has to do with, as in the Uttaratantra says, as it is said in the Uttaratantra by Maitreya, we have this Buddha nature. So this Buddha nature, or the innate clear light mind that is taught in Tantra, becomes the fundamental basis of the origination of all the external world and the internal world of sentient beings. And the Sakya Korde Yerme means indivisibility or inseparability of samsara and nirvana also is explained on the basis of this very innate clear light. So in the Sakya tradition, there is mention of what is known as the causal alaya. So within this context, it is said that all the samsaric qualities are I mean, samsara qualities are there in terms of characteristics of some in the mind, and then all the qualities of the parts and grounds of bodhisattvas are there as its qualities, and then the resultant Buddhahood, bodies of the Buddhahood are there in the nature of potentials. And so everything is explained on the basis of this clear light mind, in other words. Then if you wish to recite the six-syllable mantra, visualize the resounding of the Mani mantra from your mouth, which is imagined as Arya. And also imagine the recitation of the Mani mantra, or Mani Padme Hum mantra, the six-syllable mantra, from the mouth of the old sentient beings who have become transferred into Avalokiteshvara, the sound of which seems to move all cosmology. Recite the mantra as many times as possible. In the end, when you stop the sessions, a rays of light emanate from the syllable Hri at the heart of the personal deity at your heart and strike on the whole environment world that has been visualized as Sukhavati, the blissful land. They also melt into light and dissolve into sentient beings that have all been visualized as Avalokiteshvara. These also melt and di mare ti lavoro. So those melt into and dissolve into oneself. The Avalokiteshvara at the crown melt into light and dissolves into Avalokiteshvara at the heart. And the 1,000 Buddhas at the fortunate dissolve into their 1,000 R's at the heart. The stupa vanishes like the rainbow in the sky. You who have been visualized as Avalokiteshvara also melt into the heart. Petals with the letter R, and that in turn melts into the rosary or the lines of the mantras that are that mantra with the seeds, and that again into Hri of the center reflect that this too finally is not visible, and then establish a meditative stability on that view. So we have, in tantric practices, you have this visualization of everything arising from within the state of emptiness, which, in other words, there is this subtle mind, clear light mind, from which everything else, as the deities and the environment and so forth, arise. And at the end, then you dissolve everything back into the clear light. And so in the dissolution process, the earth element dissolves into water, fire, water into fire, fire into wind, wind into space. And within the space, there is the four states of emptiness. So in the case of Kirtum Nosan Gyatso, at the time of that clear light of death, which happens after having at the third empty state, there you have the near what is known as near dark near attainment. And the beginning of this state, you have some memory. And so you could still remember, you could use that state to remind yourself of emptiness. And once you enter into the state of this near attainment where there's no memory at all, then you cannot think much. But the impetus of your meditation on emptiness can be carried on. And then at the fourth clear light stage, the clear light of death, so in the Dzogchen terminology, there is co-emergent memory is mentioned. So because of the mind itself being there, there seems to be some kind of a memory still. Although it's not the coarse level of mind. So at the time of death, once you reach that clear light of death, then that is the point which is usually termed as the phenomenon of Thokdam. So at that point, there is also mention of merging the child and mother clear lights. So having actually gone over, familiarize yourself with the dissolution processes, over and over again, you are able to merge the clear light of the child and the child clear light with the mother clear light. So maybe there are people who stay in Thokdam or the meditative equipoise at the time of death through other conditions as well. So the fourth point is an instruction to meditate on the non-production or of one's mind. This has two parts: the process of practicing the selflessness of the person, the process of practicing or meditating on the selflessness of phenomena. So with regard to the selflessness of persons, from Sarvatantrika Madhyamaka, the philosophical schools from Sarvatantrika Madhyamaka down, so the selflessness of persons is a reference to the absence of an self-sufficiently, substantially existent self. Whereas for the Basankika Madhyamakas, there's no difference in subtlety between the selflessness of persons and selflessness of phenomena. Both have the same subtle and both are similar in subtlety. So Master Chandrakirti says, because of the difference in the beings and the psychophysical and other objects like the psychophysical aggregates and so forth, there are the two selflessnesses. So His Holiness is asking how many of the people have memorized Madhyamaka Avatara by Chandrakirti and also studied the commentary by Master Tsongkhapa, which is called the Elucidation of the Thought. So which mentions that the person is neither one with these aggregates nor separate from the aggregates, neither it is in the continuum. I mean, so at one point when I was going through these lines, and I came across this statement where it says, the person is nothing other than mere designation. I mean, some kind of a lightning shock, I mean, happens to me. Lightning struck. Like being lightning struck by lightning. And so after that, when I thought about, when I looked at people, there is this feeling that the person, they appear to have some solid existence, but that's not the case. So I met another geisha who had similar experience like that, and the person almost felt like fainting. And then Madhyamaka, the Ratnavali says, as long as there is clinging to the psychophysical aggregates, there is clinging to self. And from that ensues the creation of karma. And then rebirth. So that shows that of the selflessness of phenomena. And in the Heruka practice of the three purifications, there's meditation on the selflessness of persons and phenomena. And Ratnavali says, since a person is a composite of 6 elements, it's not real. And each of these psychophysical aggregates are also composites, and therefore they are also not real. So with regard to the mind, of course, there's no special extension as such, but we can actually talk about temporal extension, the past state of mind, the present and future. But if you would actually check where the present is, and no sooner you point, this is the present moment, I mean, the half of it is gone and the half is yet to come. So when you check from the perspective of the 3 times, nothing can be found as being the mind. Of course, with the body, you can divide it into different parts, physical parts and so forth, whereas the mind can be thought of in terms of temporal extension, temporal moments. So to make a brief comment here, first of all, within us we have an intense grasping of I, and that spontaneously arises. When we see how the I appears to the mind, it seems as if there is an I on the 5 aggregates, which primordially exists as the object of engagement of that mind, and not an I that is merely designated as I, and that is not merely an illusion. However, when you see something which is capable of lifting the beam, a mind realizing that it is a pillar automatically arises. When you observe how the pillar seems to be to that mind, appears to be to that mind, it appears not as merely labeled, which the mind puts on the wood by thinking this is a pillar. It is as if the pillar exists in the object of the wood itself. Even if it appears to exist in this way, on the objects of 5 aggregates, there is no such I at all existing completely. For example, even in the case of the pillar, apart from what has been chosen by the thought that the wood lifts the beam, there is no pillar at all from the side of the object of that wood. Until one terms it as pillar, no perception that this is a pillar arises, and the term pillar is not used. So therefore, it does not exist as a pillar. Later on, when we designate it as a pillar, from this side, since from that time, when we see it, we can say we are seeing the pillar and so forth. Therefore, pillar is just what is designated on that piece of wood from this side. There is there's nothing whatsoever from the wood side that exists as a pillar. Similarly, as soon as a child is born of a mother, we give him a name, for instance, Tashi. When we see him, we think, this is Tashi. Here also, even though it appears as if Tashi exists from his side, and from the side of the child itself, Tashi does not exist from that side. This is because if it exists already, then it should be possible to have developed a mind thinking this is Tashi, even before such name is designated to him. However, such a mind is not developed. Therefore, what is known as Tashi is also what is merely mentally designated. So when you meditate on the selflessness of persons, you should be able to actually destroy any objectification of the psychophysical aggregates as such, because if you remain with some kind of a fixation on the psychophysical aggregates, and you think that you are meditating on the selflessness of persons, that's not hitting the point home. So if you have realized the selflessness of persons, but when you use the same kind of logic that you have used to come to that conclusion on the psychophysical aggregates, and if you are not getting the same kind of result, then that's the sign that you have realized only gross form of selflessness of persons. As these examples show, all phenomena such as I and aggregates, etc., also what are merely designated from the side of the designating mind on the individual basis of designation. So the seventh Dalai Lama says, at the crossroad of the six perceptions of the diverse appearances, there is a hazy appearance. And do not hang on to some true, solid, independent existence, but look at the empty nature. So when you look at things and objects around you, I mean people around you, they appear as if they have some solid appearance from their own side. But if that were the case, if they existed in that way, you should be able to pinpoint it, find that when you search for the identity, but you will not. And that shows that things do not exist the way they appear to us. And so they are like, there is this hazy illusory appearance, and therefore do not hang on to solid existence in them, but look at the empty nature. So it should be thoroughly established that there is nothing whatever existing from the side of the object, and this should be meditated on during the meditative balancing state. The meditative equipoise during the post-meditative state, whatever object appears should be seen empty of existence from side to side, page 864, and even though they appear to be existing. By doing so, this you will develop a perception that sees it as illusion. Here I've made a brief and extensively easy to understand presentation of the process of practicing the view. Detailed knowledge should be gained from the separate writings on this subject which already exist. The process of practicing the transference, the instruction at the time of death or near death, the root text says, having offered one's body and relinquishing all dependencies with the practice of halo light, project the mind to the joyous land. In order to implement this practice, there are 3 points: removing the obstructions of accomplishing the transference, accomplishing favorable conditions, and actual focus of transference. And regarding the first, removing the obstructions or to accomplish the transference, so there are beings to whom you owe some debt from the past lives. If there are some, you should actually meditate, include them in your meditation and practice, and then cultivate compassion towards them and call on them to come forth to you. So you should not discriminate them as some form of enemy, but even those enemies, so-called enemies who harm you, should be summoned to make your practice a significant one. So the process of accumulating merit, page 66, meditate in this way. How many countless times in general I have taken the life of a sentient being in the cycle of existence. In particular, I have taken countless lives of human beings. All these have gone, just meaningless and wasted. Actually, this is talking about rebirth, and nothing seems to have happened by which one was able to derive anything that is essentially meaningful. If after obtaining a deliberated body of this life, there has also been no genuine determination to do dharma. Practice in the past. In terms of negative deeds, I have committed many different varieties for the nourishment of this body. Now, at the time of death, this body will remain behind. Will be left behind in like an empty place, and these negative actions accumulated for its sake will generate intolerable suffering of negative existence in future. So it is improper to develop attachment to this body, and therefore relying on this, I will easily complete extensive merit. I will do this by appealing to the personal deity, the great compassionate Avalokiteshvara. Your mind itself gets completely consolidated at the heart in the form of Avalokiteshvara, the size of a thumb from its joint to the tip. Like almost like an inch. This flies out from the heart and abides in the space in front, looking at the previous old body, and observes that it is rich, white, rich, elegant, attractive, and oil, greasy, and then to the Lama in front, who is in the aspect of Avalokiteshvara, a supplication is made. Compassionate Lama and personal deity, assist me in easily and quickly completing extensive merit. From its mouth, Om is said, and 3 hearthstones of human heads, the size of Mount Meru, arise. Then from the heart of the personal deity, one Dakini, holding a carved knife, is emanated, which splits the skull off the eyebrow from the old body and puts it on the 3 hearth stones with splashing red color. Imagine that this is more expansive than the world of the 3,000 realms. Again, many Dakinis holding carved knives arise and chop the flesh, bone, blood and bone of the old body into pieces and put them in the skull until to the brim. It is overflowing, and again, imagine that from the mouth of the personal deity is said, Om Ahum, and all this flesh, body, and blood become uncontaminated nectar. The color is red, yellow, or saffron in hue, and like the color when the sun is about to rise. Even by its fragrance and sensation alone, it has the capacity to satisfy the mind stream of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas with bliss, and it has the capacity to dispel the suffering of 6 types of existences. Then from one's heart emanate Dakinis from holding skull, filling up the whole space, and with ladles in their hands, splashing the nectar as if it was inexhaustible, offering it to the root and lineage lamas, the personal deity, Buddha, Bodhisattva, Sharavaka, Buddhas, Dakinis, Dharma protectors, and so forth. So at the time of death, when you are about to die, all your relatives, parents, and so forth, your possessions, you should not have attachment to them. It's very important not to have any attachment towards any of them. So imagine their mind stream is satisfied with uncontaminated great bliss, and they are pleased, and as a result, extensive merit is easily and quickly completed. Likewise, by offering the nectar to malicious guests, they take their retribution. The debt is cleared. The resentment of having taken their life is purified, and they all become Avalokiteshvara. Next, you give the nectar to all sentient beings of the 6 categories, starting with your kind parents, and that they all purify their individual sufferings of the 6 categories, 6 realms of existence, all along with their causes, actions, and delusions. So, at the time of death, you should not have any regret whatever, thinking about how you have lived your life and without any attachment. And you should have the intense intention to transfer yourself to the Tushita heaven. One Geshe at the time of dying had difficulty dying. So he was attached to the tea and the butter. So this was a Geshe from Tashikil Monastery, and someone knew that he was attached to the tea in the monastery that was served in the monastery, which is full of butter, and because of that he was having difficulty letting go of it, and therefore he was not able to die and stop breathing. And so another Geshe came and who knew that he was attached to this, came and said, "Oh, after death you'll be born in Tushita heaven, where you'll have much more tastier butter tea with lots of butter." And then at that point the Geshe died. So here also, when you need to transfer your mind to Pure Land, you should actually have this intention, the intense intention to be born there, whichever pure ram, like Tushita heaven and so forth, you wish to be born. So this favorable condition for accomplishing transference is training intensely in the aspiration of being born in joyous land, praying to be reborn there, and also dedicating the virtuous roots for its causes. The actual visualization of the transference is explained by the last 2 lines. In the center of what is known as Joyous Dharma Place, surrounded by lines of mansions of precious gems, is what is known as the palace heightened by Dharma and the palace of high victorious sign. This is the perfect place of precious gems where Lord Maitreya resides. In front of it is what is known as Yiga Chunzin, the enchanting Dharma retention. In the nature of precious gems, expansive and extremely delightful, which is the meeting ground where the Lord gives the teaching. In the center of this, center of that is the lion throne of noble Dharma, on which is Maitreya himself, whose body is magnificent like the golden Mount Meru, possessing rays of 100,000 sun. There he is seated facing towards you, the people of Jambudvipa, this earth, and teaching in abundance the wisdom perfection. Perfection of wisdom to host of countless retinues of bodhisattvas. Imagine that you have seen this directly as well, and then with intensely fervent and single-pointed view, mind, request, victorious Maitreya, possessing great compassion, protect me from the fears of cyclic distance and bad migration, and take me to the joyous land. Liberate me quickly and liberate me in this very place, from this very place where I am seated. Having made this appeal, a tube of light rays like the stretching of a sleeve comes down immediately from the heart of the Venerable Lord and falls straight away in one's fontanelle, which is like open to ventilation on the top of the center of the roof. Your mind itself completely constituted in the form of one deity body of Avalokiteshvara, the size of one finger joint, 1 inch, which gazes up from one open from the opened window of one's fontanelle, and which is like an open ventilation into the path of the tube of light. Imagine that one directly perceives the radiant, yellowish heart of the Venerable Lord, which is like a polished golden mandala struck by sunlight, and maintain the three perceptions that are the tube of light. Rays of light is the path. You yourself are traveling on that path, and that you are transferring into the heart of the Venerable Lord. So sometimes, I mean, there are people who are able to have lucid dreaming, lucid dream, where they are able to recognize dream as dream. I've met some Westerners who do that. So are there any, is there anybody who has such experience of being able to recognize the dream as dream? Again, with the intense feeling of hope, make a supplication as before, and rays of light in the shape of hook come immediately from the heart of the Venerable Lord through the inside of the tube of light and enters through your fontanelle and strike at your heart, which is visualized as Avalokiteshvara. And as if it is being hooked out, it flies upward and outward from fontanelle. And from your fontanelle, it travels through the tube of light as unhindered as the shooting of a meteor, and dissolve straight away at the heart of the Venerable Lord. Imagine that the Venerable Lord's heart and your mind intermingle, as if one taste remain in that state for a while. So when someone is asleep, the scientists are able to check whether the person is dreaming or not by putting wires on their head. They can say that the person is in deep sleep, and when the sleep becomes a little bit gross, then the person actually is dreaming, able to have dreams. And when dream happens, there is this rapid eye movement. So when the sleep becomes a little bit thinner, then less deep, then you have dream. So you have better chance of recognizing dream as dream when your mind is clear, when you're able to have clear dream. So in order to be able to have this ability to see, to know dream as dream, recognize dream as dream, you should try to write on pieces of papers and stick them on the walls of your room. Writing dream, dream, and then reminding yourself of it. And another the method of making people aware of dream, and while they are dreaming, is someone speaks very with a very slow sound, talking to the ear person, low voice, talking to the ear of the person who is dreaming. When you see them having this rapid eye movement, you are dreaming now. So one Rinpoche is always relating a story that he has heard from a Rinpoche who had told him that when he was younger, he was able to actually have lucid dream and be able to actually emanate into different forms in his dream. So in order to be able to recognize the Bardo as Bardo, you need to, the measure of being able to do that and while you're alive is being able to have lucid dreaming. So after having dream, when you So when you dream, I mean, sometimes when you come out of that dream and you feel good, sometimes you feel sad and so forth. So, well, you have lucid dream, and if you are able to focus your mind on the mental energy on the cultivation of bodhicitta, compassion, and the view of emptiness, I mean, that will have the impetus when you wake up also. So this can also have positive impact on your mind for transformation of the mind. The lucid dreaming, visualize, imagine that the Venerable Lord's heart in your mingle, and as if of one taste and remain in that state for a while. Visualize your mind coming out again from the heart and imagine being born as fortunate one in the center. So explanation of the mixing, the essence of practice of intermediate state. The root text says, knowing just this, on page 71, knowing just this as an intermediate state, transform the external, internal, and the sacred. And when then with the yoga of emptiness and compassion, the wise one enters the womb. The page 72. The first line shows the way to recognize intermediate state as intermediate state. So he's always making all these comments with regard to these, and then this means to think all these present perceptions of objects are like mistaken appearance, are all mistaken appearances and of the intermediate state. I must recognize the intermediate state as intermediary. When you meditate repeatedly on this, then later on, when you are born in the intermediate state, you will be able to think, now I am in the intermediate state, and all these appearances are the appearances of intermediate state. Thus, you'll be able to recognize the intermediate state as the intermediate state. This is similar to identifying mindfulness of recognizing what is dream, which is done by continually maintaining mindfulness during the day. The second line shows the actual practice of the intermediate state. Here, transforming the external means that from now on, when we perceive external environment, materials such as earth, stones, and the words appear to us, we need to think that their appearances are mistaken because of our being in the intermediate state. In reality, they do not exist like this. Then the mind, without following these impure appearances, transforms them into pure Ram, such as the blissful Ram and the Sukhavati land, and then meditate on them. So similarly, transforming the mind in the internal means when internal in sense, such as in sentient beings, like human beings, animals, and other diverse forms of life, transform them into the deity of body of Avalokiteshvara and meditate on them. Transform the sacred means that when both these environment and internal essence appear as having existence from their own side, it should be thought that such appearances are due to one's mind being polluted by the true grasping with its imprints. Apart from such appearances, there is no existence from this side. Even so, such a single particle, so much as a single particle, meditate on them, and so forth. So it's 11 o'clock. Finished. So on the one hand, the second Dalai Lama was someone Trophu Lotsawa was received his instruction from Mitazoki, who actually received it personally, received it from Avalokiteshvara. And we have a special connection with the lineage of the His Holiness Dalai Lamas. And it's important for us to do our best to practice the Dharma.